What the fuck is up, everybody? My father, who's been a musician and active band member since before I was born, is similar to many music listeners, in the sense that he's intensely educated on the music that was prevalent during his formative years as a teen and young adult, but not so much so when it comes to today's musical landscape. Recently, for the first time ever, I tried to put my dad onto a band, and he already knew who they were. He even had a friend, another technologically disadvantaged man in his 60s, invite him to a concert to see this band. This band was Geese. Anyone who listens to Geese knows that something about them is so reminiscent of 70s rock. They seemingly pull from a wide range of influences, but it's clear that the blood of the vintage rock era courses through their veins. Yet simultaneously, they juxtapose this with a contemporariness that's extremely refreshing, and they manage to push boundaries in modern rock without sacrificing their influence or sounding derivative. Personally, I think they're leading the charge in that regard. That's why I bring my father up as evidence, proof of the fact that they've captured both a boomer generation stuck in the past, as well as the current generation of chronically online kids and young adults, which is a testament to their ability to inject historical rock star energy into the future of an aging genre. Naturally, after acknowledging this idea, a question arises. How do they do it? There's a general consensus amongst rock and roll fans that the records of the 70s have some sort of indescribable quality to them. This is oftentimes attributed to a different recording process. Variations in the recording process result in different sounds. During the 70s, tracks were recorded onto tape rather than digitally. The tape added subtle hints of warmth and grit to the tracks that were recorded. In some regards, simply because the tape had a distinct feeling, there was character baked into the tracks that set them apart from the ones that were recorded in the following era of digital recording, where a series of technological advancements allowed for what can be described as cleaner recordings. But if it was as easy as recording songs on tape, Geese would be far from the only band that's able to masterfully reference the non-digital era. In fact, I'm not even convinced Geese records on tape. To be honest, I don't know anything. Everything in this video is purely speculation based on a small amount of research I gathered while looking into this topic. I've taken the liberty of developing some personal theories on the cultivation of nostalgic music, and some of these theories may apply to Geese, some may not. Ultimately, I enjoy listening to their music greatly and will attempt to answer the question that I stated earlier. How do they do it? I believe that many people, including artists themselves, would be surprised to learn how something simple as studio time scheduling has an impact on the music that's made. Many fans of Geese know that their latest album, Getting Killed, was recorded by Kenny Beats, a musical savant. Not much information is documented on Geese's actual recording process, but based on information I've gathered through interviews and just the way that they talk about it, it seems like they recorded their album in some concentrated studio sessions. What I mean by this is, it seems as if the band records music on their own, but for the conceptualization of this specific project, chose to be intentful with where they recorded it and who they recorded it with, seemingly having the intention of carving out a specific time to record at a specific place. Potentially, they hang out, practice, record, at home, link up, conceptualize songs. Then, before an entire project is fully conceptualized, but still, when they have some basic song ideas that are ready to be fleshed out, they schedule a period of time where they hit the studio, potentially for days or weeks on end, to actually record the songs and pull everything together into a finished project. I make this assumption based on the way they describe recording with Kenny, as if it was an event. It's potentially fair to assume a lot of their work could be conceptualized at home, with a long period of concentrated studio sessions scheduled to bring the songs to life, rather than going to the studio every day consistently and conceptualizing the songs while they're there. This slight variation in structuring opens up a Pandora's box of differentiations in regards to what the final product looks like. Firstly, let's address song conceptualization. Conceptualizing a song outside the studio is totally different than doing so within. First of all, you can only use as many instruments and voices as you have humans. What I mean by that is, if you're coming up with a song idea with your band in your garage, and your band only has 2 guitar players, it's impossible to practice a song that has 3 guitars playing simultaneously. On the contrary, if just a guitar player is in the studio by himself, he can record 1 track at a time and conceptualize and record a song with 10 guitars playing simultaneously. When you're in a studio, because you can literally record endless tracks on top of each other, one at a time, it changes the ideas you come up with because the nature of your ability is different. This variation results in endless subtle nuances in how artists execute the creation of a song, beyond just the surface notion that there's a limited number of instruments and voices they can use to create the song. For example, let's say a basic song idea is conceptualized and the guitarist wants the riff to hit harder. If that artist were conceptualizing the song in the studio, he might think to try and record a second take of the riff and lace it on top of the original so that both are playing in unison, making it sound thicker. But instead, let's picture this artist is conceptualizing the song in his garage. He obviously can't play two guitars at once. So instead, when he thinks he needs to make the guitar hit harder, he physically plays the instrument harder and louder. Both of these methods are ways of executing the artist's idea, but the nature of the environment and the resources it contains when the song is being conceptualized result in two totally different results. Let's take it a step further. Let's say now that the guitar is louder, the vocals the artist is singing get drowned out. If that artist is in the studio, he might do something simple, like turn the vocal track up. But if he's practicing with his band in his garage, he might start projecting his voice louder and screaming so that he can be heard over the guitar. Then the artist hits the studio to record a song where he's playing the guitar as loud as he can and screaming, while something as simple as being in the studio when he thought of it would have resulted in a completely different song, one with softer vocals sitting on top of multiple layers of guitar. Hopefully, you can see how the subtlest variation in environment can cascade into uniquely influencing every decision while making a song. And conceptualizing the song outside of the studio results in a butterfly effect of events with subtle nuances that seem insignificant but result in drastically different ideas for making the song. To be clear, I have no idea what the Geese recording process looks like. The previous tactic I just mentioned for making a song feel older, as well as the rest of the ones that'll be mentioned in this video, can be applied through philosophy. In other words, if an artist is consciously or even just intuitively aware of these mechanics, they can purposefully apply them. So for example, I'm sure Geese have conceptualized many songs in the studio, but maybe the boundaries are self-imposed, and they're conceptualizing these songs as if they're not. Generally, as music recording has digitalized and as professional studio equipment has become so easily accessible, any artist with even a minuscule budget can create a high-quality recording in their home. Consequently, the actual way that a song is conceptualized has changed completely, not just how it's recorded. This is a key factor in identifying the difference in records made in the 70s versus now. Music equipment was far more expensive and far more primitive. So as a result, even if a song was conceptualized in the studio back then, that looked a lot more like a band hanging out in a garage and jamming than recording in a modern studio with unlimited digital resources. Back then, partially because recording equipment was so primitive, musicians couldn't pack up their studio and bring it on tour with them. Musicians needed hired studio professionals to record them, and studios were harder to gain access to. Therefore, bands almost always created their work in concentrated studio sessions. This idea of only having a limited time to record the music also led to different music. The awareness that they needed to be prepared before going to the studio and that they needed to get a certain amount done before they left changed the pace of the creative process and resulted in a different approach to making music entirely. Bro, do y'all hear that? This is a wild turkey, dog. Oh my god, it's multiple of them. It's multiple wild turkeys, bro. But one of them just ran off. Fuck, dude. I didn't even really get it. Bro. I thought it was like a person walking up on me. 'Cause I heard him. But I heard the footsteps and I was like, that's a loud bird. And then I realized it was a Turk, man. Fucking just calling at me, bro. The Turks come out in Nebraska, bro. The Turks be coming out. So that was a fun little detour. I just love this shit, man. It's such a beautiful day, dude. Fucking subscribe, dude. This leads me to commitment. One obvious limitation induced by less consistent studio access is time. Imagine you're doing your last vocal take for the last song you're recording for your album. It's the last 5 minutes of your last studio session before you fly home. You have enough time to run through the song only once more. By God, you're obviously going to commit to that take even if it's not perfect. Even if you miss a note or a word, you're going to continue the take as if you didn't, and you're going to try to make up for it because you can't start over. It's almost as if the take becomes a live performance. This is closer to the reality for 70s recording, because oftentimes artists were limited to sometimes as little as 4 tracks per song, and because changing one little thing could mean having to re-record the entire song and losing other spectacular takes, with each take you recorded, you really committed. Every take was like a performance. There was no such thing as a practice take. There was just practicing before the take. Comparatively, in today's world, there's no limit to how many tracks you can record until you get the one that you want. What this means is that artists are much quicker to abandon takes. Even if a take sounds great, because we have the ability to, we record 100 more attempts to see if we could do something better. This bias towards commitment just resulted in a different end product. Sometimes less risks are taken because mistakes are more costly. Pitches of songs are changed because an artist needs to bring something closer to their range in order to get through a take perfectly with limited time and tracks. Little happy accidents occur, like unintentional vocal inflections that stay in the track because the rest of the track sounds good, or the singer sounding a little out of breath and some rasp coming through in their voice. These moments add character and nuance to the song. In general, if an artist feels the pressure to perform when the record button is hit, that in and of itself results in a wildly different take, and is an obstacle that results in a challenge for some, but for others is the reason they come alive and brings out a level of performance that couldn't have been born without the pressure. In addition to commitment, there's improvisation. Modern recording has allowed artists the luxury of taking out a single word from a take they don't like. It's allowed us to create Frankenstein tracks, where we pull the best moments from 20 different recordings into one seamless track. But when an artist has to commit to a take and often perform the song in its entirety, it's going to sound different. Because of their pacing and cadence, and based on the moments where they can breathe in between lines, some lines will be vocalized with more breath in their lungs than others. Some lines won't hold the notes as long, so the artist can take a breath before the next line. And in general, there's slight improvisation. In the moment, because it feels like a performance, the artist might improvise shifts in tone, pitch, cadence, lyrics, volume, and more. This feeling of improvisation is tangible, and it's something Geese has in spades. This leads me to another important distinction that plays a role in Geese's ability to profoundly reference their ancestors: the difference between multi-track and live recording. Multi-track recording is the way that most modern music is recorded. What this means is that there's a grid set at a constant BPM. Onto this grid, you can record as many tracks as you want, one track at a time. Maybe you start by laying some drums down, then guitar over the drums, then another layer of guitar, then bass, then 5 layers of vocals, then ad-libs, then an orchestra, one instrument at a time. On the other hand, live recording is where the entire song is played all the way through by all members of the band simultaneously. Each instrument is being recorded individually, but nonetheless, everyone is playing together at the same time, and typically, songs are recorded all the way through at once. Now, think of why it's less common for songs to be completely recorded live. First of all, you need way more equipment. You need to have the capacity to record numerous things simultaneously rather than one at a time. That means, for example, if you have 5 instruments being recorded at the same time instead of one at a time, you need 5 microphones instead of one. Second of all, because each instrument has its own microphone, they bleed into each other, and it makes it difficult to obtain a clean, quality recording. I'll spare you from a lengthy explanation on the details, but generally, as I'm sure you can imagine, live recording introduces a plethora of obstacles and limitations that can be solved with multi-track recording. On the contrary, there are some benefits to this outdated style of recording. For one, it strengthens the level of commitment and improvisation as discussed before. Secondly, and most importantly, bands are able to interact with each other's instruments while recording. The band is actually playing in unison, and they're looking at each other, listening to each other, and their chemistry is tangible. The instruments are listening and responding to one another in a way that couldn't be replicated if they were playing each one at a time. I'm not proposing that every sound in a Geese song is recorded live, but it's clear to me by listening to their music that a conscious effort to record parts of their song live and the combination of multi-track and live recording has contributed to the nostalgic feeling that accompanies their modern and forward-thinking sound. So, sound selection is another relevant factor that contributes to that as well. Again, this is another side effect of concentrated studio sessions. When songs are conceptualized outside of the studio, then instrument choice is drastically different. In a studio or on a computer, artists have an endless amount of instrument choices at their disposal. But when making a song in a garage with your friends, the sound selection is limited to the physical instruments that can be played in real life. I believe this fact speaks for itself. Geese's sound selection in their music mirrors the analog era of the past, and it seems like a conscious effort on their behalf to cultivate a specific vibe that juxtaposes our current digitalized musical landscape. Consequently, because of that fact and the other nuances in their approach, I have to acknowledge Geese's intentionality. Whether it be the way they record, how they schedule their recording sessions, or their sound selection, Geese's attention to detail is massively impressive. They've quietly hacked and optimized the nuances of their recording process, and beyond just putting effort into their playing, singing, and writing, they're also manipulating many subtle aspects of recording that most artists overlook, so that they can capture the sound they want, as well as, if I'm allowed to speculate, just do what feels right and is fun for them. This intentionality in their recording process is just as present as in their mixing process. Mixing, in painfully simple terms, is the editing of a song and all the different elements within it after it's recorded. Geese clearly are very intentional with how they mix a track and are seemingly cautious with every addition or amendment they make to the track in post, so that they can find the equilibrium in adding more flavor to the track without sacrificing its carefully cultivated integrity. One way that this is made clear is through vocal effects. Look no further than any Geese song as evidence that they're biased towards minimal vocal effects, and typically lean towards more traditional vocal effects, like reverb, delay, and panning, as opposed to more modern and digitalized vocal effects like pitch shifters, modulators, and distortion. They also, as mentioned, are very intentional with vocal effects and seemingly have a less is more attitude where they use them sparsely. But when they are present, they demand attention, and they're automated and placed in specific parts at specific times. Continuously, a slightly unrelated but important factor in this is Geese's interest in live performance. A lot of their decision making in their creative process may very well be coming from them considering how songs are going to perform live. Being conscious of how a song is performed will have an impact on the instrument selection, vocal effects, and everything else mentioned in this video. Geese is recognized widely for their live performances. Their songs evolve as they perform them over and over, and because they put so much care into their song performances, it's safe to assume this attention to detail is present since before the conceptualization of the songs. Imagining how a song will be performed and being cognizant of that will heavily influence the song that's made. And this awareness around the performability of a song is another one of the many things Geese does that separates them from other modern artists and is reminiscent of a former era of music. By the way, I know I just switched locations randomly. The audio might have cut out and cut back in. My computer died while I was filming the earlier part of the video. I had like a couple more paragraphs left to go. So we found a new spot and we're going to thug out the rest of it. So look, y'all, I don't know what I'm talking about. I could be wrong about everything in this video, and there's likely things that I missed. I just want to make that clear. And no matter what, there's no right or wrong way to make art. I'm just deeply fascinated with the behind the scenes of great music. As an artist, putting my finger on the reasoning behind why I like certain music or understanding how certain pieces of art are made, I feel more equipped to create the music I want to make. I hope if anyone's even made it this far in the video that they find this information as compelling as I do. Regardless of how much it accurately applies to Geese, it's the mechanics themselves that are fascinating. I'm a big Geese fan, and although I don't know all the details on what their process looks like, I do believe that there's a reason why they stand out. There's a reason why they're beloved by old and young. I do believe that there is much intention in their art, and their success isn't an accident. As artists, through manipulating our recording process, sound selection, mixing ideology, etc., we can change the music we make. And stuff like that is the coolest shit to me.
Hey,
So if you watch this whole video, you should subscribe to my Patreon. Links in the description. Patreon saw the video first. Patreon gets exclusive music, podcasts, videos. It's only $1 a month. And if enough people subscribe, I can quit my job and do this for a living. So you should subscribe.